The protests and unrest in Iran explained. The recent upheavals in Iran following the murder of the 22-year-old Mahsa Amini by the morality police has in fact come to seem like a revolution in waiting. Since the Islamic Revolution of 1979 in Iran, the people have had minor protests on rising fuel prices or electoral rigging or general middle-class issues, but never has it swelled into a wholesome and totally engulfing protest wherein both men and women, civilians and military, have all risen to voice the need for desired change. Could this be a revolution? Sit back and watch this video till the end to learn more about the protests and unrest in Iran in past and recent times. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell for more informative and thought-provoking content. Part 1. The Islamic Revolution in Iran. The year 1979 brought with it the eroding of the Iranian monarchy and the establishment of an Islamic Republic. January 1978 saw the protests of thousands of Iranian students and youths against the monarchy's excesses. What was more, many people were killed by government forces in anti-regime protests, serving only to fuel more violence in a country where martyrdom played a vital role in religious expression. With the casualties increasing, the Protestant feelings gained uprising, inhibiting a cycle of violence. On September 8 of that year, the regime imposed martial law and troops opened fire at demonstrators, killing them in dozens and hundreds. With this development, government workers began to strike, bringing the oil industry to a standstill. Protests and demonstrations grew even more as thousands of protesters took to the streets in Tehran. On February 11 of 1979, the Iranian armed forces declared their neutrality, effectively ousting the regime. Following overwhelming support in a national referendum, Iran was declared an Islamic Republic on April 1, 1979. What followed was a return to conservative social values. The Family Protection Act, which guaranteed the rights of women in marriage, was declared void, and mosque-based revolutionary bands patrolled the streets, enforcing Islamic codes of dressing and behavior, dispatching justice to whomever was deemed an enemy to the revolution, as a mandate of the Sharia laws. Part 2. The death of Mahsa Amini. The 22-year-old Mahsa Amini was a victim of the morality police's cruelty and brutality. Mahsa Amini was with her brother at a train station in Tehran when she was stopped by the morality police. She was accused of not complying with the country's hijab rules and was detained immediately, only to be reported dead 3 days later. Eyewitnesses reported seeing her being violently beaten in a police van. Within hours, she was taken to the hospital in a coma. While the government argues that she had underlying health conditions, her family and thousands of protesters insist that she was killed. The morality police routinely subject women and girls to arbitrary detention, torture, and other ill treatment for not complying with Iran's abusive, degrading, and discriminatory compulsory veiling laws. Mahsa's death sparked such grief and anger among the Iranian citizens, causing widespread protests across the country. Still, the protests have been met with a deadly crackdown. Security forces have repeatedly used unlawful force. They have fired live ammunition and metal pellets at protesters at close range, misused tear gas and water cannons, and severely beaten people with batons. Since Mahsa's death, the deaths of dozens of men, women, and children have been recorded. Hundreds of others have sustained painful and serious injuries, including at least 2 who have been blinded in one or both eyes. Most are not seeking hospital treatment for fear of arrest, increasing the risk of infection and other health complications. Part 3. Internet shutdown following the protests in Iran. There has been the confirmation of total disruption to internet service in Tehran and other parts of Iran following Mahsa's death in September and the social media uproar across various countries of the world. The internet blackout proves to be severe, affecting connectivity at the network layer and generally cannot be worked around with the use of circumvention software or VPNs. Access to international social media and messaging platforms have also been restricted across all major internet providers. Other platforms, such as Facebook and Twitter, have already been banned for several years before. Access to the messaging app, WhatsApp, was restricted across multiple internet providers shortly after that of Instagram. Mobile networks, including MCI, which is Iran's leading cellular operator, were subsequently disrupted, leaving many internet users completely offline in a country highly dependent on mobile service. Many people are of the opinion that the subsequent shutdowns are only a ploy by the government authorities to hide the awful treatment given to protesters from the eyes of the public. What do you believe is the case? I would like to know your thoughts in the comment section. Now let's move on. Part 4. The role of women in the protest. For several reasons, the recent protests in Iran are unlike any other. For instance, women took the leading role this time around. The women jointly took to the streets without their legally required headscarves. Their grievances went far beyond the hijab, to the repressive regime holding sway in their country. In connection to the hijab law is the theocratic doctrine that makes women second to men in politics, parenting, in office, and home. The hijab, which was said to be a means of protecting female chastity and honor, has indeed been made to seem an irremovable part of the women's lives. The women, however, insist that it should be their choice to wear the hijab willingly, and the government has no power to dictate that choice. When the protests broke out after Mahsa's death, the women in her immediate family took to the streets with the thin shawl she usually draped over her blonde hair in public. More than anger, it was defiance. The women proved their resistance by jointly tossing their headscarves into bonfires and dancing bareheaded before security agents. Consequently, more than 24 have been arrested and several female protesters have been killed. Yet the women have refused to be quelled. While it is true that the Iranian women have participated in protests before, never have they been so vocal and high-spirited about it. The female journalist Nilufar Hamidi of Shard, who first brought Mahsa's story to limelight, was arrested unduly and kept in solitary confinement at Evin prison. Several journalists have also taken to hiding their identities for want of spontaneous arrest, because journalism itself has been made to seem like a sore crime by the Iranian authorities. Part 5. Chances of a revolution. The Iranian protests in recent times bear the semblance of an all-true revolution. What is more, all members of the society have risen in solidarity against the oppressive government. Many athletes, celebrities, and political figures have taken sides with the demonstrators, expressing their support for the rightful demands of the people. The hacktivist group, Anonymous, has equally shown support to the Iranian supporters, claiming to have hacked the Iranian government websites and state tag. The United States equally issued a general license that eased some sanctions on the export of information and communication technologies to Iran, prompting billionaire tech entrepreneur Elon Musk to express his own support by offering to activate the Starlink satellite internet connection to help Iranians evade government censorship. President Biden has further promised to look for ways to facilitate technology services to Iranians. That is yet to be realized. While several commentators are of the opinion that the demonstrations are a prelude to women's revolution, it seems to go beyond that definition. The people seek to bring the dictatorship of the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, to a total end with the general outcry for justice. Yet, it is worth wondering how a revolution may come about when the security forces of the Islamic Republic remain intact, and the state has continued to rely on law enforcement forces and plainclothes agents to crack down on protesters. Also, the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps have done nothing to protect the revolution from internal and external threats, because indeed, they do not feel threatened. In most cases, a revolution is birthed when the army or military forces guarding the republic loses its guards and is defeated. However, in the case of Iran, despite the demonstrations and unending encounters with security forces, the state does not seem ruffled by the uprising and is in fact static towards taking extra defensive measures to preserve the government. Can it then be said that the Iranian protests and mass unrest is spearheading for a revolution, or would it die down equally, like every other minor protest that has seen the break of day within the early years of the 21st century? I will leave that as a food for thought. If you watched this video till the end and found it insightful, please make sure to leave a thumbs up at the end and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more informative content. Also, make sure to drop your opinions about the Iranian protests and the chances of a revolution in the comment section below.